You know, for pretty much all of human history, the word virus has meant one thing, right? A threat. This invisible enemy that's been behind some of our absolute worst plagues. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if we're on the verge of moving from a state of constant war with them to one of, well, reprogramming them? We're about to see just how.
Okay, I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, but the answer actually pulls back the curtain on one of the most exciting frontiers in all of modern medicine. Today, we're going to connect the dots between a very real threat to our farms, a totally legendary fictional pandemic, and the incredible science that's turning our oldest enemies into our newest allies.
So, to really get where we're going, we first have to understand the enemy as we've always known it. This is the classic viral playbook. Invade the host, make millions of copies, and, destroy everything in your path.
Let's start with a perfect example. Avian influenza. You've probably heard of it as bird flu. It's just a textbook illustration of a virus playing its traditional role, a dangerous pathogen spreading like wildfire through bird populations and poultry farms.
And here it is, right? You can see the two sides of the story. On the left, you've got the host, and on the right, the tiny little invader. And when a really nasty strain like H5N1 gets into a flock of chickens, it's absolutely devastating. We're talking about a virus so potent it can wipe out domesticated birds in less than 48 hours.
And the scale of this threat is it's staggering. Look at this number, 50 million. That's how many birds had to be called in Europe during a single devastating bird flu epidemic that lasted just 1 year. That is the massive cost of trying to contain one of these viral enemies.
So our defense strategy has always been pretty blunt, pretty direct. We try to avoid it, we lock down entire farms, we call millions of infected birds, and then we disinfect every single thing in sight. The playbook is simple, really. Contain and destroy.
And that feels like the whole story, doesn't it? Mindless germ meets a strong human response. But this is where our story really takes a turn. What if these pathogens aren't just mindless little agents of chaos? What if their methods are way more sophisticated than we've ever given them credit for?
And that brings us to this new way of thinking. We're starting to look at pathogens not just as enemies, but as nature's master hackers. I mean, these are highly evolved specialists that have learned how to manipulate their environment with breathtaking precision.
To get this, we're actually going to look at a different kind of pathogen for a second, a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. Now, it's not a virus, but its strategy tells us so much about how these things operate. Like any living thing, it has a very simple, fundamental need. It's got to eat.
But there's a problem. Once this parasite gets inside one of our cells, it wraps itself in this little protective bubble. This keeps it safe from our cell's defenses, but it also traps it, cutting it off from all the nutrients it needs to survive. It's kind of like locking yourself in a pantry, but you forgot the can opener.
And this is where the genius comes in. Instead of trying to break out, the parasite hacks its way to the food. It's evolved this incredibly elegant solution to re-engineer its environment, all from the inside.
So how does it do it? Well, it all comes down to that membrane, the wall of its bubble. The parasite produces this little cocktail of special proteins. These proteins travel to the barrier and assemble themselves into tiny molecular pores, which basically turns the wall of its prison into a strainer.
Think about it like this. The parasite literally builds its own molecular straw. It punches it right through the membrane of its little bubble so it can sip nutrients directly from the host cell. It's not brute force. It's sophisticated, biological engineering. It's a hack.
And that right there, is the light bulb moment. If evolution can create a parasite that's a master thief, a creature that can build its own tools to survive, what could we do if we learned how to write that kind of biological code ourselves? Could we take a virus and actually reprogram it for good?
Okay, so this is where science fiction really starts to become science fact. We are now living in an era where scientists aren't just fighting viruses, they're actively rewriting their genetic code to give them a brand new purpose.
So how on earth does it work? Well, think of it like modifying a car. First, you start with a basic viral chassis, something like the vesicular stomatitis virus, or VSV. Step 2, you pop the hood and you disarm it. You take out the gene that makes it harmful. Then, step 3, you reprogram it. You insert a new piece of code, a gene of interest, that you've borrowed from a totally different pathogen, say like Ebola. And finally, you let it go. When this modified virus gets into our cells, it can't make us sick. Instead, it just uses our own cell's machinery to produce that one harmless little piece of the Ebola virus. This piece then works like a training dummy, teaching our immune system what the real bad guy looks like without ever putting us in any danger.
The result is, well, it's incredible. You've effectively turned the virus into a biological drone. It's a microscopic, self-replicating delivery system that's been given a new, life-saving mission: to train our immune system for a fight that might be coming.
And listen, this isn't just some theory stuck in a lab. This technology is already out there in the world, and it marks a huge shift in how we go from seeing a threat to creating a treatment.
I really want this to sink in for a second, because it's so important. This is not some far-off futuristic possibility. Reprogrammed viruses are being used right now to save lives from some of the deadliest diseases we know.
And here's Exhibit A. It's a vaccine called Ervobo. This is the very first vaccine approved by both the FDA in the US and its European counterpart that uses this exact viral vector strategy. It takes that VSV virus we just talked about, reprograms it with a tiny piece of the Ebola virus, and provides incredibly powerful protection. This is the ultimate proof that it works. A virus, once a threat, has been turned into a cure for another.
But of course, the idea of intentionally engineering viruses, well, it carries a lot of cultural baggage, doesn't it? For every scientist who sees a potential cure, there's a sci-fi fan thinking of something a little more apocalyptic.
This really captures the two sides of the coin perfectly. On one hand, you have the clinical reality, this precise, controlled tool for medicine. And on the other, you have the fictional nightmare that's been burned into our imagination by stories like Resident Evil, the man-made virus that gets out of control.
So let's just put them head to head. In fiction, you've got the sinister umbrella corporation creating the T virus to be a bioweapon, and that leads to, a zombie apocalypse. In reality, you have scientists creating viral vectors to be vaccines and therapies, and that leads to immunity and cures. The technology itself is neutral. The difference between a weapon and a medicine is all about the intention of the person who's building it.
We've gone from seeing viruses as just simple enemies to understanding them as these complex biological hackers, and finally to reprogramming them as our allies. We are standing right on the edge of a new era with the power to edit biology itself. We've proven that we can do it. So the deeper question, the one we're all going to have to answer together, is about the lines we draw and the future we choose to build with this incredible and incredibly powerful new tool.